Let's do a walk and talk. This video, what will this video be called? The woke right. The woke right, the United States of nihilism, the United States of nihilism, and the woke right. Something like that. So, I made a video, I think a couple months ago, talking a little bit about the Fuentes thing. Look, I forgot what I actually said in that video, so I can't be sure to what extent this will be redundant. But yeah, I found the Nick Fuentes character interesting for a while, and I think that part of why I find him interesting is the same reason why people like horror movies or serial killer documentaries. We're kind of fascinated with evil, destructiveness, whatever. There's some sort of I don't know, you can't look away type thing, which I think is a big, one of the many reasons why he gets an audience to begin with. Especially these days where it's like controversy sells. I mean, we all know sort of Trump's rise to power, and that, you know, a big part of that, there's a lot of reasons, but a big part of that is people were interested. People like to watch entertaining things, entertaining people, and perhaps to some degree as a society we've grown to value entertainment above all else, at least sometimes, I suppose. But anyway, going off on a tangent. What I really want to talk about in terms of the wokeness on the right and the nihilism thing, these are themes that I've talked about forever, which is what's the common theme as you watch different YouTubers. I mean, I don't really watch TV at all, and if TV is defined as cable, like I don't watch MSNBC, Fox News, whatever. I don't know how many people still do. I guess the older generation probably does more. But even on there, what's the common thread between big conservative YouTubers, big liberal YouTubers, liberal cable news networks, conservative cable news networks? What can we sort of see as a trend, or what can we predict? Just the most obvious thing from a psychological level in terms of what's the agenda, what motivates them, right? And unfortunately, I suppose, most of the time, it's not that there's a bunch of different people with a bunch of different core principles and different worldviews that are rooted in a deep and genuine concern about some vague notion of making the world a better place, or even their community a better place. And what are they motivated by? Self-interest. And that's what I find interesting with some of these Fuentes interviews that have been going on, where there's these really weird, not, I wouldn't even say, it's almost wrong to call them softball interviews. It's like the podcasters or YouTubers, whatever you want to call them, that are conducting these interviews, they actually either are genuinely stupid, which I don't think is usually the case. It's more of acting. And what's the acting? The acting is they pretend that they don't understand what's happening. Like with Steven Crowder, he does these weird questions with Fuentes, you know, do you think white people are better than all races? Do you hate Jews? Do you dislike black people? Whatever. All these things that are sort of these layup questions that Fuentes is giving disingenuous answers to. And then Crowder will pretend like, all those silly woke people trying to tar and feather you as some sort of racist, anti-Semite, whatever else, right? Look, you just said that you're not. If you said that you're not a racist, if you said you're not an anti-Semite or whatever other thing, if you say you don't, if you say that, oh, okay, I'm gonna sort of pretend like hundreds of clips that can be found that are evidence to the contrary don't exist. Or we'll maybe play the game that they're out of context. And as someone who is totally into dark humor or crossing the line when it comes to comedy or whatever, the difference between that and Nick Fuentes is that it's not meant to just be comedy. It's comedy that's clearly, if you want to call it comedy, some of these comments like I love Hitler or whatever, it's rooted in his actual belief system, because he doesn't just stop with some sort of edgy, outlandish comment, which we could argue whether it's even funny or not, but I guess we'll leave that to the comedians or for you to decide what you find funny. Everyone has a different taste. But what we can't deny, if you're being honest, is that if you listen, you know, this whole argument about out of context, no, if you listen to the full context, that's actually what's more damning. It's not that these clips are taken out of context. The full context is that his whole worldview is rooted in, essentially, I don't like non-white people, whatever he decides is non-white, right? He doesn't like those people. He will find any way he can to disparage them, whether it's anecdotal, statistical, whatever evidence he wants to present, right? You know, doesn't like women, doesn't like Jews, all of these things, right? And I do think that there's obviously a reality of the problem that I had with wokeness and that I talked about for so long, and I said that this would happen. And what I say would happen, which is there'd be some sort of blowback effect. Now, how powerful or to what extent this is going to carry on, I'm not sure. I mean, one thing is we could talk about Trump. I'm not going to talk about what I think of Trump here. Honestly, I kind of am not really, I'm not sort of a big Trump hater or Trump lover. If you ask me what I think about something specific to him, I could tell you, but it's just not something, you know, you might, maybe you think this makes me nihilistic, but honestly, Trump generally is not someone or something that I think about that much, right? And you can have your own opinion about that, but I'm kind of just maybe a little jaded and apathetic to the whole Trump question. But what I can say about it is, you know, the woke left is what allowed him to win, right? Some people on the left hate this reality. They don't want to take responsibility or think that there's any problem with their approach to things, or maybe they're just kind of a sort of a moderate leftist, and so they're not really seeing the big picture of elements within their own party that sort of fan the flames of, sort of give power to really the abhorrent views that they're afraid of. But yeah, this whole thing that there's obviously a very serious truth to is the demonizing of men, the demonizing of white people, the thing that has been going on for so many years, where within these institutions, whether it's at school or work or anywhere else, that you can say things, you can say derogatory comments about men, about white people, particularly about white men, and that's supposed to be funny, which most of the time it's not that funny. It's less offensive if it is funny, of course, but that it's perfectly acceptable and seen as cool, so much so that there's certain people that are so cringy that their whole sense of humor is built on sort of random white people comments, oh, white people this, white people that. It's so kind of cringy and trite that they just think that this thing, sort of some invoking some sort of dislike or mockery towards white people, is supposed to be seen as inherently funny or virtuous and funny at the same time. Anyway, there's a cringy element to that. But this is stuff that has been perpetuated by the woke left. But yeah, so what's happening now is sort of the result of all of this, which was sort of inevitable. Some of it was Trump, but Trump is the Diet Coke version of the authentic, we'll say. I don't even know if he's authentic, that's another story, but the actual real in-your-face racism, misogyny, anti-Semitism, whatever, you name it, the hate. Fuentes will make Trump look like, I don't know, the most angelic, bringing people together type of leader of all time, in comparison. So I think the thing too, I don't really know where I'm going with all this, just kind of rambling, is that, because of this sort of nihilism, right, it's that everyone is reacting in self-interest. So that's why does even the woke left exist, right? What really is that? It's this thing where, of course, it's nice to be the good guy, right? And even if you might say, okay, well, what about white people who hated on white people, even white men who hated on white men, right? Whatever it is, if it's this very easy sort of road to being a good, virtuous person, right? Just hating. If hating or mocking others of a certain group makes you a virtuous person in the eyes of a certain community, or maybe a lot of people, maybe mainstream society finds this appealing, right? Of course, it's a lot easier than actually doing anything meaningful or good or helping people, right? If mocking the right people makes you feel like a good person, it makes other people see you as a good person, that's a lot easier path. So that's what all these people have in common, though, in the end, right? So then the right, at least this woke right, this, people who they genuinely think that the racism thing is cool, and, let's blame everything on blacks and Jews and Mexicans or whatever. It's the same game, right? It's just two sides of the same coin. It's convenient to automatically be one of the good guys. It's convenient to be considered funny, virtuous, whatever, to bash on a certain demographic, and so on. Now, when it comes to some of these things, people say, oh, well, what about statistics, right? This is not just my feelings, man. I can statistically back up why this particular group of people should actually, deserve some criticism. They should be demonized. Well, there's a couple things to that. One thing is, even if statistics were completely on your side in terms of an argument, the question is, what are you actually hoping to accomplish? And if we really look at it, 99% of the time, there isn't some sort of new or interesting solution to any problems. It is just I can feel self-righteous. I'm not the bad guy, but I see the bad guys, and let's build up this sort of, I'm part of the in-group that knows who the enemy is. I'm part of the in-group who knows who the bad guys are. And this exists on all sides. And not all of it is necessarily demographics. There is sort of the woke right, the woke left, who picks and chooses which race or gender or sexuality, whatever the thing is that they want to hate on. But there is also the, political affiliation version of that too. I'm a Republican, so I'm a good guy. I'm a Democrat, so I'm a good guy, right? Whatever it is, okay, maybe there's not a sort of pride about your skin color or who you mock in a sort of direct sense, but here there's some other label, there's some sort of other identity marker. And all these things, as this connects back to nihilism, they're all just so hollow, right? Your skin color, whatever label that you happen to adopt today that no one kind of gives a shit about at the end of the day. Oh, here's who every 4 years, I bubble in this thing. Here's which group of people I blame on all of the world's problems. God, isn't that, there's not actually genuine principles. There's not community. There's not actual, most people that are a part of this game, which is just kind of most of society, right? That getting into sort of Facebook political debates or YouTube debates or owning people on their cable news network, whatever it is, they're not actually worried about sort of the state of the world or particular people or building anything, right? But what sells their brand. And if I were to really work on, my knowledge of politics and a lot of other things, and I invested in a team of camera people and created a podcast that actually people would watch and put money into advertising my channel and all these different things, even if I did all that, if my sort of brand was going to be some sort of, moderate, whatever you want to call it, something that isn't really extreme, it probably greatly reduces the chance of me picking up steam. Whereas if I said something inflammatory, whatever it was, about anybody, if I had a sort of, controversial take on something, then that is likely to get eyes on me, right? And so that's what's happening in our society, is that having eyes on you is profitable. And it seems to be that for most people, right, profit is king. Profit, money is the religion. So that's why too, when you're seeing some of these conservatives sort of kind of buddy up to Fuentes and try to pretend like his views aren't hateful and that, oh, he really does have a point actually, and he's just being taken out of context and we should just have a dialogue and all this stuff. They're doing that because, one, he's a controversial figure and having him on the show gets views, but they have a sense, okay, this seems to be picking up some steam. This is what seems to be popular. And that's the thing, is that these people don't have any principles. They don't have any values. They don't care about people, at least not in the general sense. Maybe there's some people in their lives that they might care about, I would imagine, but it's not about they're not trying to help society or something. And now, am I saying that everyone needs to be sort of a do-gooder and everything they do is about helping society? No, not necessarily, but almost all of them would present themselves that way, right? Whether it's a selfish, nihilistic left-winger, whether it's a selfish, nihilistic right-winger, they will all sort of pretend like it has something to do with what's good for people, what's bettering society, that they care about this sort of crime, right? But often when you just listen to them talk just about things in a general sense, you can really tell. Maybe this is sort of it'd be hard for me. What's my evidence for this? I guess I'd have to think deeper on how to really point to concrete evidence. But when you just hear the way they talk, your intuition will tell you that these aren't people that are staying up at night caring about these issues that they pretend to care about, right? It's all branding. Everyone has their own brand, and it's what's good for the brand. And that's kind of the scary thing, is that things become popular oftentimes not because they're good. They become popular for a lot of stupid reasons. Just like, why do people join cults? Why do fads exist and fade out or whatever, right? So things become popular for a lot of different reasons. Most of them don't have to do with anything to do with what's virtuous or good for society, at least much of the time, right? But what you have is, whether it's the left or right, there does seem to be, people don't like to be ostracized. People also want to monetize their brand. In particular, I'm talking about not just your average person, but the person who actually is making money off of, sharing their opinions. And so they just go along with whatever rises in popularity. And that's what's so dangerous about some of this stuff, is that it might start off as just, oh, we're just having a conversation with someone hateful, and kind of, mainstreaming their views and letting them sort of pretend like their views aren't as hateful as they really are. What's the big deal? But the question is, will this stuff become more and more mainstream? So, I don't know. I think the underlying thing, though, is that for a lot of reasons, our society, I think, has become more and more nihilistic. And even the aspects of society that aren't nihilistic, where it's like really surface level, not nihilistic. Oh, okay, I'm not going to be nihilistic. I'm Nick Fuentes, so I'm anti-nihilistic. I'm calling myself this, I'm part of this religious group that supposedly has values and principles. But most of these people that are saying, oh, I'm Catholic, I'm Christian, I'm this, I'm that, their actions have nothing to do with, there's nothing, any of this sort of good wholesomeness, right, of religion, which it does exist. Religion is certainly not all bad, but instead of being one of the people who actually, they sort of cherry pick religion, taking the good, leaving the bad, they do the opposite, right? So there are people out there that are quote unquote religious, right? And they cherry pick the good, and they kind of forget and pretend the bad stuff doesn't exist. And that's kind of, I would say, the best version of religion. And then the worst version is people who do the exact opposite. They use any parts of religion they can for egotistical reasons, for enabling them to defend their hatred as coming from some sort of deeper moralistic place, rather than just their sadistic tendencies and their lack of empathy, right? They try to root it in something. And people do this for everything, right? They do it with their woke ideology. They're hateful people, right? Not all, I guess not all woke people are hateful people, but people that are hateful people can use this sort of wokeness, whether it's left or right wokeness. They use the identity politics thing. They use the grouping together to funnel their desire to be hateful and to ground it in some sort of, as if it's for the greater good, as if it's because they're virtuous or so morally appalled by something that a particular group or demographic is doing or whatever. And yeah, no one wants to do sort of the hard, unsexy work, which in reality is probably not you or I being any sort of revolutionary figure, and just kind of doing that cheesy stuff of just generally trying to help people when you can. And, if you do build meaningful relationships with people and there's some sense of looking out for each other and loyalty and whatnot. And this is not to say that you have to put all politics aside and you can't care about things like you can't care about the broader society and justice in a lot of different areas and fairness and people not having, affordable health care and all sorts of different things. You can still care about those things. But the thing that really you can do to make the world or society a better place is stuff that just no one finds cool and sexy. It's not controversial, right? It's not edgy. It's not maybe not even fun. So that's just the reality of things. But I think I was trying to touch on why it's gotten this way. But yeah, I do think that, this has just become so cliche, almost too cliche to even say. And it's repeated so many times that we don't really understand the full effect of it. But it's this phone right in front of me right here, right? And this is not me saying that I hate my phone. There's many aspects of it that I clearly enjoy, including I guess I enjoy recording this right now. But, the obvious thing is the way technology has changed our lives, the way is that people no longer have real, genuine communities at least to a large extent, where they know and care about their neighbors in a deeper way. And all that being said, a lot of this stuff isn't necessarily new, right? In terms of tribalism and violence and hatred and all those things. And some might argue even that, our society as a whole is less violent. There might be statistical evidence to back that up if you're looking at things on a sort of per capita basis or whatever. But whether or not that's true in a statistical sense, just from a feeling sense, I think there is this feeling that a lot of people have of something seeming wrong, a sort of emptiness and hollowness to our lives. And I do think that there's a lot of layers to that, but the biggest thing is, I think there is, whether or not there's an increase in violence or not, right? So a lot of times these people that say, oh, this is the best time to be alive. The average person has a 60-inch TV and, per capita, there's less murder than there was in some other year or whatever it may be. That doesn't necessarily make up for the hollowness that I think a lot of people feel. And a lot of that is rooted in human disconnection, human selfishness. There's a lack of principles. And it's just, it's strange how disingenuous almost all of these YouTube characters are. And that's what I think most of them are. They're characters. And even if they're not playing a trick always on a conscious level, like even if they're not saying, ooh, I'm being fake, I'm really gonna try, they just learn to be fake. They learn because they're drawn to the popularity, they're drawn to the views. And even if they don't have the self-awareness, which some probably do have the self-awareness, Fuentes might be one of them, actually knows exactly what he's doing. I suspect he's not a particularly empathetic character, so that plays into things too. But just with even other personalities, other characters, they just naturally flow to whatever is popular. And if that's sort of a feeling of hatred or kind of a simplistic worldview that identifies an enemy that the group can rally behind and feel self-righteous in the comment sections, then that's what they gravitate towards. So, what are my solutions? I don't have any. It would be for people to become more aware of all of this, to become a little bit more humble, a little bit less inclined to demonize any group of people. It's not cool to, I don't care about jokes. I've always, like I said earlier, make your jokes, whatever. But it is important to check to what degree are they jokes? Are they actually jokes? At some point, if your only joke is I love Hitler and you've said it a dozen times or whatever it is, how funny is it? And is it really about being funny? Or is there something else to it, which is probably just some sort of spreading of hate and animosity? The problem is people don't really want to lay down their weapons, so to speak, because there is always another side, right? There is the yin and yang. There is the woke right to the woke left and vice versa. You can find an enemy if you're looking for it. And so I guess just be careful about what you're looking for, because whatever it is, you'll be sure to find it.